The Speaker's chair is still empty. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is another declaration of truth from your host, Terry A. Hurlbut. The House of Representatives, as of this morning, has yet to choose a Speaker. Representative Kevin McCarthy from California has stood for Speaker 6 times and failed each time. He dared the House Freedom Caucus to block his bid for the speakership, and they took the dare. Two questions now remain. What concessions will McCarthy have to make, and will he keep his promises? Before we try to answer those questions, I do want to shout out to the prime sponsor of this channel, which is Conservative News and Views, link in the description. Be sure to check out the awesome CNAV Store. Scroll down near the bottom for that link. Lots of great merchandise there, especially this t-shirt that I have chosen for today, which reads, "Freedom isn't free." One more thing. If you like what you're about to hear, you can like this video. You can also click the bell icon to get a notice every time I come out with a new one. In fact, do you see the little heart shape with the US dollar sign in it? That's the super thanks icon. If you really want to keep these videos coming, click on that and leave me a tip. Any currency will do, so long as it's legal tender. Now then, some background. Now, you've heard me talk about Kevin McCarthy before, like the time that a recording surfaced of his having said that he had demanded that then President Donald J. Trump resign his office. More recently, someone started a rumor that former Representative Liz Cheney of Wyoming could become Speaker. Now, no one at all is talking seriously about that prospect today. Representative Andy Biggs of Arizona did talk seriously about running for Speaker himself. In the November House Republican Conference meeting, McCarthy won the nomination to the speakership, 188 to 31 for Biggs. But 5 members declared they would never vote for McCarthy no matter what. They are Representatives Biggs, Matt Gaetz of Florida, Matt Rosendale of Montana, Ralph Norman of South Carolina, and Bob Good of Virginia. McCarthy might have brought his trouble on himself. The red wave broke on 3 seawalls, don't forget. Rumor has McCarthy helping Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky build one of those seawalls. Simply put, he withheld campaign funds from anti-establishment or MAGA Republican candidates. All he cared about was, would this candidate or that candidate vote to make him Speaker? If not, no money. The House Republican Conference could have gained 100 seats. Instead, they gained barely enough to take control. So McCarthy started conceding, promising to change the House rules to make it easier to recall a Speaker. After Nancy Pelosi made that almost impossible. But he apparently dared his opponents to make trouble in the House organizational meeting on the theory that that would look bad for them. But Matt Gaetz clearly took the dare. He nominated Andy Biggs on the first ballot. 19 Republicans voted for someone other than McCarthy on that ballot. And of these, 10 voted for Biggs and the rest voted for others, including Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio. Second ballot. Jordan actually put McCarthy's name in nomination. Gaetz' rejoinder was to nominate Jordan himself. In so nominating, he said, and I quote, "If you're trying to drain the swamp, you don't put the chief alligator in charge of that exercise." Unquote, Matt Gaetz. His 18 rebellious colleagues agreed with him, so once again, the vote failed to select a candidate with an absolute majority. Notably absent from this vote was Representative Dan Webster of Florida, who had defeated Laura Loomer in her primary. He was back for a third vote and cast it for McCarthy, but Representative Byron Donalds, also from Florida, who happens to be chairman of the House Republican Conference, voted for Jordan instead. Result? 20 votes against McCarthy. Democrats have all voted consistently for their chosen minority leader, Hakeem Jeffries. He represents a sea change because all Democratic leaders have stepped down or stepped aside. The House adjourned until noon yesterday. Mr. Mackenzie Bettle, and in the interest of full disclosure, this man is a personal friend of mine, suggested that the Republicans risk looking disarrayed by continuing the delay. And even President Trump endorsed McCarthy over any other challenger. He told Lauren Boebert to knock it off. Well, she didn't knock. But a settlement of the speakership was not to be. At noon, the House convened again. This time, Matt Gaetz nominated Byron Donalds to be Speaker. The latest reports indicate that Donalds got all the votes of the defectors. In any event, he got enough of them to deny a resolution even after a total of 6 votes. The 3 the day before, 3 yesterday. The House agreed to adjourn until 8 p.m. Eastern Time, but instead of voting for a 7th time, someone introduced a motion to adjourn. It passed 216 to 212, with 218 to 216 rather, with 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats not voting. The House currently has 434 members. Representative Don McEachin, Democrat from Virginia, died last month. No one believes that anyone went to bed after that adjournment. Everyone expects that McCarthy was still trying to negotiate. His will not be an easy task, because Matt Gaetz, in the press conference announcing his refusal to budge, excoriated McCarthy for refusing key legislative concessions. They include support for a limit in the number of years a representative may serve, and a rule requiring any budget resolution to balance before going to the floor for a vote. More to the point, the Freedom Caucus has not forgiven him for withholding campaign funds and limiting Republican gains merely to have a smaller conference that he could better control. McCarthy's supporters have been slinging insults, or worse. Before I tell you what those are, I want to shout out to a sponsor who can really help you through the economic storms to come. That sponsor is oursilverlines.com. Do you feel like you're working harder for your money just to get by? You're not alone. The fluctuating economy, employment issues, unexpected changes in life have left many families struggling over the past few years. Collecting gold and silver can help shield you against many of these challenges. But if you're like me many years ago, you don't know where or how to start. Our Silver Lines helps by connecting you with thousands of members who are learning the secrets to creating and protecting true wealth by collecting precious metals. Whether you just want to collect rare and unique coins or take advantage of the business opportunities this company provides, they can help you learn to live an exceptional life. Visit oursilverlines.com. Learn how you can build a legacy for your future. Representative Dan Crenshaw of Texas actually used the T word to describe his recalcitrant Never Kevin colleagues. And Laura Loomer, who is in Washington now to confront various members, received worse, an offer of physical violence. She tried to ask Frank Luntz a question about McCarthy, and according to her, Luntz tried to have her arrested. She recorded the event, and then Luntz's companion knocked her smartphone out of her hand. Loomer describes what happened next in a tweet to which I have a link in the description. She speaks of having to record 3 videos because, she says, Frank Luntz's companions were behaving like wild animals. I myself had an interesting dispute with another Twitter user over whether or not a previous speaker may appoint a successor if the House fails to choose one by election. I've left links in the description to every other tweet in a thread that began with Laura Loomer and ended with me. Loomer began by owning the emotion of hatred for McCarthy and for what he has done to the country and to her personally. She accuses him of interfering with her primary, and I think she's right about that from what I have been able to determine and what he has never denied. Then this other gentleman, name of Nathan Haynes, actually said that if McCarthy doesn't get in as Speaker, Nancy Pelosi will appoint her own successor. Put away your petty differences and let's get Congress rolling, he said. Well, I took exception to that, as you can see by following the thread. I asked him if he were sure. I accused him of making it up. And I said the House rules don't grant Nancy Pelosi or anyone else that kind of power. And this much I'm hearing repeatedly, that there are no House rules until the House chooses its Speaker. Well, my interlocutor then said he'd heard it from Dan Crenshaw, who had said it on Fox and Friends. Now, I'll get to that, get to what Representative Crenshaw actually said in a moment. But he didn't quote Crenshaw's tweet. So all I had was that statement that he's supposed to have made, which I can tell you positively would be a bald-faced lie. I'll tell you all what I told Mr. Haynes. The House will just keep voting until they get a Speaker. Same as the College of Cardinals keeps voting and voting until they get a new Pope. The outgoing Speaker has no power to appoint a successor. Bank on that. So the other guy says, oh, I don't know. He'd heard it several times that the House could vote 100 times on this, and if they still don't have a Speaker, the current Speaker gets to name a successor. He said several news outlets said the same. Well, he didn't tell me which ones, and I have found no indication that any of them said that. So I repeated, if anyone is saying a thing like that, they're lying. I challenged him and anyone else to show me a precedent for a Speaker appointing his successor. Then I suggested that the legacy media people must be indulging in adult pleasure by entertaining the slightest notion that Nancy Pelosi could do a thing like that. And I want to tell you all again, no precedent exists for a previous Speaker to choose a successor. I looked for that precedent and I never found it. The House has always chosen its Speaker by roll call vote, even during contests for the speakership. The contest continues until a candidate wins a majority of votes cast. The most recent such contest happened in 1923. The House took 9 votes to elect a Speaker then. But nobody said anything about the previous Speaker naming his successor. But Representative Crenshaw did say something similar, but not identical. I have a link in the description to his tweet, which I did find. This guy's incredible. He said, in effect, let you in on a little secret. Technically, the Speaker of the House right now is a clerk that Nancy Pelosi appointed. End of paraphrase. Follow the link. Now, what he said, you have got to hear to believe. Let me tell you all something. Dan Crenshaw clearly misspoke, and Nathan Haynes misheard. The Clerk of the House can do nothing but hold vote after vote after vote until the House does agree on a new Speaker. But that Dan Crenshaw would even utter a peep along that line shows you that the establishment, the Uni Party, of which he is a member, is getting desperate. Because if anyone is suffering from bad optics, it's them. And their boy McCarthy and not the Freedom Caucus. The House will meet again at noon today. In fact, McCarthy himself set the precedent, and he now wants to avoid, that the failing candidate bow out. McCarthy himself did precisely that after then Speaker John Boehner had to resign. McCarthy couldn't get the votes, So the Republican conference settled on Paul Ryan, who turned out to be just as disastrous. This impasse has clearly brought out the worst in people, and that includes Representative Crenshaw, who, if he is not lying, is at least exaggerating the role of the Clerk of the House. And it also includes McCarthy, who by some accounts is negotiating with Democrats without result. Back in the last century, he might have been able to broker a victory by such means, but that was when the most liberal Republican was more liberal than was the most conservative Democrat. Well, that is no longer, and might never again be, the case. Furthermore, it ill befits Representative Crenshaw to compare the House leadership election to some kind of primary and House Organization Day as the corresponding general election. He knows that such a comparison has no foundation. Only desperation would make him say something like that. Dr. Stephen Turley suggests that Matt Gaetz has already made himself de facto Speaker, meaning that McCarthy, in order to be Speaker, must concede a rule allowing as few as 5 members to recall a Speaker. And after that, McCarthy might wield the gavel, but what Gaetz says goes. That reminds me so much of one of my favorite scenes from a 1961 World War II movie, The Guns of Navarone, with Gregory Peck, Anthony Quinn, David Niven, James Darren, and many others. It's a scene in which, when the members of a secret mission team are discussing their plans, one of them hears somebody at the door, so he writes, "Keep talking," on a pad, tiptoes to the door, and then jerks it open and grabs this laundry boy who's just outside. Then their host marches in and asks, "What's going on? That's my laundry boy. Why are you roughing him up?" So the team explains that he was listening at the keyhole. Well, after more back and forth, the team leader tells the host that he needs to arrest the laundry boy and hold him incommunicado for at least a week. And the host refuses. So then the team leader tells one of the team members to screw his silencer onto his handgun and shoot the laundry boy, and if the host gets in the way, to shoot him too. The other member prepares to do it, and the host appeals to Gregory Peck's character to stop the shooting, and Gregory Peck says, quote, "I can't stop him, he's in charge, and anyway, I agree with him. Of course, he doesn't have to shoot you. All he has to do is to make a call to our HQ, and you'll be on the first troop ship home as a private. Unless you give him your word that you'll do exactly as he says." Close quote. I have a link in the description to a YouTube video containing that clip. It's a 6-minute clip, and I'd say to run it forward to the 3-minute mark to see the interesting part. And having said all that, and suggesting that Matt Gaetz might have Kevin McCarthy where he wants him, just as that team leader, just like that team leader in the movie, I still say the Republicans would do better with a different speaker than McCarthy. I will always remember him as the man who gave up 100 seats. And I know positively that Laura Loomer and many others have personal reasons not to trust the man any further than they could throw him. And if it means a delay of a few days, so what? Take your time and do it right. Link in the description to the article, to Laura Loomer's tweet about Frank Luntz entourage behaving like wild animals, to my own thread with Nathan Haynes, to Dan Crenshaw saying that really idiotic, possibly mendacious, and definitely threatening thing he said on Fox and Friends, to that video of the laundry boy scene in The Guns of Navarone, to my Declarations of Truth Twitter account, and to Conservative News and Views. I've also left links to the awesome CNAV Store and to ourcivilized.com, as I also mentioned. You know already about how to like a video, turn on notifications, and leave a tip. On the end screen, I'm going to leave a subscribe link to my channel, and links to that laundry boy scene, and also to 2 earlier videos I've already done, saying why I think Kevin McCarthy should not become Speaker of the House. This is Terry A. Hurlbut delivering another declaration of truth and reminding you to let the truth set you free.